Hello, everyone. I'm going to get started. Lots of familiar faces, lots of new faces. Thanks for joining us today. Our wonderful Sarah Danziger is away at the moment. Yes. Getting some well-deserved rest before we kick off July. A lot of exciting stuff happening. Going to make a few announcements. We will be kicking off July with our photo book and zine fair coming up, July 6th and 7th. So please join us if you're around. It's going to be really fun. We're going to start both days, Saturday and Sunday, with a panel discussion. And there's going to be a lot of wonderful artists showing and selling work. We have an upcoming teen workshop through the Wild Lens, which will be happening July 8th through 12th. We're going to spend a week at the Mountaintop Arboretum, which will be our living classroom for a lot of different environmental photography techniques. For any teens in your life, it'll be a really fun time. And also our workshop, Working with Visual AI, is coming up July 13th and 14th, and there's one spot left. So if anyone is interested, check it out. There's more details on our website. I am very excited tonight to announce Alon Koppel. Alon returned to photography, his main passion, focus for creativity, and a source of income following a career in design. Alon's experience as a graphic designer enables him to bring a more rigorous methodology and project-based approach to photography than he previously could, and paradoxically with that, more freedom to explore. Alon's work runs the gamut from a re-photography project of historical stereoscopic images to making long exposure photographs of various modes of transportation. His photography practice centers on key aspects of conceptual landscape photography, emphasizing location, time, and repetition. Grounded in the exploration of the sublime, the work documents the evolving landscape through meticulous depictions of man-made structures and vessels. It delves into the signs of industrialization, climate change, and the natural progression of seasons. Alon currently resides in Catskill, New York. His Shipping Lane project was selected for an exhibition at the Clompching Gallery in New York City as part of Fresh 2023. Alon is currently an artist in residence with the Erie Canal, working on a long-term reef photography documentation project. Can everyone help me in welcoming Alon?
Hi, everybody. Hi, I think this description, which I wrote, sounds more complicated than what I'm going to show you. I'm going to go through an arc of my life from childhood and life in Israel through the time that I came to the United States. And I dug some photos that I made about 30 years ago. I was born in Israel in a small town called Nahariya, which is depicted here, and here, and here. And I never really realized that I'm photographing architecture when I was 20 or even younger. My sister-in-law gave me a Pentax K1000 camera when I was 13 and started photographing from there. And I had a little dark room in my bedroom. And I think I just photographed odd little vignettes of life in sort of suburban, but a small coast town in Israel. McDonald's was a fairly new thing in Israel. It was like a big celebration when they decided to come into Israel. And I do like this mural. This is in the bus station in my hometown, which I visited often. I guess I don't need to look at the screen. I should look here and at you. I think I always like the changing landscape, which is very common in Israel and also here, building of highways, roadways for cars, new construction of homes for people, but also some derelict landscape in between. In my hometown, which is very close to the border with Lebanon, there is a lot of memorials for artillery and for the wars and for fallen soldiers. And I think this scene for me depicts my hometown quite well in the 80s. And also now, since I'm going to talk about rephotography project later on, I'm thinking I should go back there and rephotograph this spot because now it's a big shopping mall. So you won't see that. I don't think there's any grass there. I served in the Israeli army from 89 to 92, 3 years. I was in artillery. Well, I guess I was getting that from my childhood here. I was basically in artillery because I didn't want to be in the front line, like everything, all the crazy action. Well, artillery is kind of almost dormant sometimes, so they send you everywhere to be almost like a policeman. So I was in Lebanon as an artillery person for about half a year. And then I was in the Gaza Strip. I was in occupied territories in Jenin, Nablus, you name it. Artillery are not super educated soldiers. They just send them whenever you need more power, manpower. This is in my army base in the desert. There are no trees there. The sign says commander's table. So only officers can have this food. I don't think I photographed a lot. I was trying to find photos from the army, and I had a small camera. I think I had an Olympus XA, if people remember that camera. Really sweet little camera that can survive army service. So a lot of sleeping soldiers in between, me sleeping as well on the way to the base. This is the entrance to the dining room, and it has a prayer on the wall that says something about God is great and you got to wash your hands. Just, you got to wash your hands. The blue dishes are dairy. So the army is sort of divided religious-wise. So people, it's kosher, so people can join the service. And then lunchtime will have meat, will be orange plates. So you very much know what you have and what you're going to do, and you can't mix them. This is a scene in the Golan Heights. I served there for a while. Very hot, kind of like today. But I think I liked what's going on here with the half army dressed people and the half changed landscape with that basalt rock that is local being changed into a wall, into like a trash can holder. There was something there that triggered that photo for me. An army convoy. And I think this is in Jerusalem. So after my army service, I basically started school in Bezalel, Art Academy in Jerusalem. Hey. And photographed the surroundings from that kind of point of view of going to college, trying to relax myself after being in the army for 3 years just before that. This is in the old quarters in Jerusalem. And I think fairly on, I started photographing people through cars and trains. It's kind of like a motif that I have where I kind of imagine what they think or what they do. And I got pretty good in photographing moving subjects from the train or the car. So these were all hand printed in Bezalel. This is the back of the photo. I just want to show to the people who remember Colenta and the color printing. So I have like my dial in for magenta, yellow, cyan, the aperture, the height of the enlarger, and the number. So we had like maybe 12 enlargers, so number 11. So I knew to go back. Consistency is key. If you go back to another enlarger, the filters will be different. The yellow will be very different from that. That being said, it's not always color. I also did some black and white photography that I also dug out this week when I looked at images. I don't do a lot of street photography, but I like the scene here with this kid. Some still life in Jerusalem from the time that we did like 35 millimeter and did show the whole full frame by printing black edges around it, so you know it was cropped. Stairway to Nowhere. Crossing to East Jerusalem. The road to East Jerusalem. One of my 4x5 shots from school. So we had 4x5 cameras there that we can take out of the department and walk around in Jerusalem. And it's kind of odd because it's not sharp. I think I did a contact print with that. So I like it. I mean, the idea with 4x5, for those who don't know, it's a really large film. So 4x5 inches, everything is really sharp. You know, people use that instead of smaller cameras so they can get really high results. So it's kind of dreamy and not a 4x5 like, but that's a sign that it's a 4x5 film. I did a school exchange in England on my third year and submitted photos to a magazine that was really well respected then. Now it's defunct, Creative Camera. And I had 2 photographs selected in an issue that is with Jenny Holzer. So that was cool. These are the photos. Pretty dark. So I used to print really dark. I like to print black and white, push it really tone-wise to the dark side. The left photo says a beautiful woman, and the right one says what's on your mind. And this is taken probably from a train in Europe somewhere. I lived in Europe for a little bit. I tried to find work in Holland, being something, just not being in Israel. And I couldn't really. Europe pretty limited like that compared to the US. You basically have to prove that nobody else in the EU can do your work if you don't have an EU passport. That's like sort of impossible. In the US, I was able to get a work visa for technology, creating websites. So that was very doable. Some of these photos are showing my love of diptychs, combining 2 photographs together. And I started experimenting with very low res, which was then really top of the line digital cameras, 1 megapixel. It was kind of amazing. I started combining these photos for my trips and sort of still having this romantic side to it. Interesting for me to see it as I'll show you work later that is also with a diptych that I'm kind of following through, something I did 25 years ago. And I didn't mind the low resolution. I thought it was interesting with film to try and combine the two. And that's, you know, all we had for digital at the time. This is in England. And the train is in England, and I think the houses are in Israel. So in New York, I started to meet some other Israelis, of course. I actually moved here to New York to work in a company that was Israeli based. That's how I found them, through a friend of mine who worked there as well. And we had a little show called West End, and it was basically in Chelsea before Chelsea was Chelsea. It was a building that was about to be renovated for galleries. And they said, you know, you have it for like a couple of weeks working stuff. So for those of you who recognize Elinor Carucci, known Israeli photographer, on the left side, her husband Eran, and next to me, looking to my left, is Yael Bartana, who's a good friend of mine. She was in school with me the same year, and Eran and Elinor were a year above me in school. I showed small prints from Israel on the wall, and I showed even smaller books that I made. So I think I was always interested in creating some kind of 3D object. Those are basically contact sheets from 2.25 camera, 35 millimeter, and 126. And 126 was a tiny negative. So I kind of practiced how small can it go. And they had like a cover and a box, and kind of cute. This is my statement, which I really can't read here, but I'll just read the first paragraph. The journey I just realized I started a long time ago was the title. And I said, in this body of work, I'm showing personal look upon local objects and landscape, which my feelings towards are ranging from love through compassion to hatred. These feelings are a result of constant love-hate relationship with the country where I was born and yet unwilling to live in now. So pretty much my struggle was that I didn't want to stay in Israel. Moving to New York was very interesting, but my photos were still very much Israeli-based. I met my wife, Melissa, about a year later, and we started a design firm together. After working in a few companies with H-1B visa, it was time to do it on my own. It's called Fusion Lab. And we did a range of clients. When I started doing this presentation, I thought, you did it for 20 years. You got to put some names there. So 2 sites you guys will recognize is Hudson Hall in Hudson and Olana, across from in Catskill. We did that. Those are probably, I think, the last 2 websites we did. And then we closed the company. And some of our other clients were a lot of nonprofits and some financial companies. Work with the John Mitchell Foundation, Richard Diebenkorn Foundation. It was very interesting, and I have to say the web design world 20 years ago was interesting. It was like you build it from scratch. You still do Flash, you do animation, you do something that is not templated. I think I basically stepped out of it when it got to be just another box that you drop in and add text to. It's not as personal. While I was working as a designer, I also got some gigs as a photographer. The woman here is Kim Suja, an artist that is known for a lot of her video work, and they're really beautiful. And she hired us to do her website because she liked our website. She said, your website is the quietest website that I have seen from all the design firm. You have some kind of quietness to it. So she started working with me closely on the website, and as a result, found out that I'm a photographer and started hiring me to do projects for her. So she did a video at Nogales in the border crossing in Mexico. And I went there to photograph that and did some other road trips with her as a result. Part of the road trip, I had some time for myself, and I started doing this series of photographs of an area that I haven't really been in before, Midwest, Arizona. These are all Mamiya 6 medium format film. And I'm always interested in titles and what titles do to an image. There is a generating power station in the middle that I don't think you will see if you didn't necessarily read the caption or if you didn't look at it closely. These were fairly small print. So the cloud is attractive, but then you see there is another kind of sort of cloud bellowing out of the rocks there. So that's their power station. And I played around with these frames around the photo just to get some color there. So in New York City, I was busy with my company and I didn't really do a lot of photography. But when I went back to Israel, I always had my camera with me. And I feel like there was a sense of me kind of knowing what the land feels like, feeling the dirt, feeling the air. When you're born in some place, I guess it's part of your feeling. So this is my hometown again. I mentioned it's a coastal town. So this is the first photo you actually see of the seashore. Entrance to the occupied territories. And I think this is near Beacon. So I did try photograph a little bit here. I think the point I'm trying to say is that I was sort of in love with Willem Eggleston, and his photographs are kind of beautiful, live, things are happening, but I couldn't really find my way there. I'm not a Willem Eggleston. I needed to really figure out something else, and I didn't know it then. And the answer will come. It's probably one of my only photos from New York City. And you can see that it's very much about what humanity is doing to the landscape, or bringing dirt from outside to the sidewalk. And back in Israel, could be that the power station again interested me, and then kaka means shipped in Hebrew, but obviously it's cacao, as the sign was not flipped, so worked for me. Somewhere around upstate, maybe the back of a cemetery in the border between Tel Aviv and Jaffa. A new road and tunnel built in Haifa. This is actually in Italy, sort of an homage to artist John Baltasari, that has a series of balls that he throws in the air, and he's trying to photograph them. And he's got like a series of 3 photos of balls and how they all get aligned or not aligned. And this was on a train to Milan, and it's right on the window. What's that?
There was a red spot on the window,
Yeah. I don't know why.
so you could have a different background.
If I were to move aside, I don't know if all the windows had it. Maybe it was an exit. Or-
The train moved.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, you could have a series
Yeah,
of red dots with different backgrounds.
totally. I like that the guy is there, and there's like a children's playground. I like that aspect of that. And again, my fascination with roads, or roads that don't go anywhere, or traffic circles that don't make sense. As a graphic designer, I subscribe to some interesting magazines about design. One of them is called I. It's a British magazine, a really well done quarterly, I think. And in 2009, I saw an article there about a Swiss photographer, Joel Tetamanti, and a book that somebody designed with him called Local Studies. And I thought the work was really beautiful and kind of met what I do in looking at the landscape and the built environment. So I reached out to Joel. I said, can I buy a photograph from you? And he said, no, but let's exchange photographs. I said, it's even better. So we struck a nice relationship from that. And we met one time in Israel by chance, another time in Europe, and then here, which I'll explain a little bit more later. As I did design for clients, I also started thinking about doing curation and magazine on my own. So this is 2010 is when the iPad came out, and some clients hired me to do design for it. And Adobe had a system called Adobe DPS, Digital Publishing System, which basically was in beta. Everybody could use it to create iPad magazine, put it in the store for free. So at some point, I had a magazine in the store, and Wired had a magazine in the store. That was kind of like the beginning of things. And then Adobe changed it and made like, well, it's very expensive. It's only for like Wired, Condé Nast. So these are some covers from View magazine. And essentially, to find photographers, it's either people that I knew, like Pete. You're in one of those. And then people that I reached out on Flickr, which was then a really big deal website for photographers. So I would reach out to people. I told them about the magazine. They said, yeah. And I said, send me a blurb about you and 10 photos. And I put it all together. And I made 10 magazines, 10 issues out of this. And then I got busy and the system changed. I tried to change to another French system, which was, the user interface was just like terrible compared to Adobe. So I basically let it go. But those 10, here's a spread with Joel work that I showed, the Swiss photographer that I mentioned earlier. And that's another spread of his work. And then I converted all of these to a website. So viewphotomag.com, if you go there, and you can see 10 beautiful issues. I also created an app called Image Words, which allowed you to basically put text on photos like here, which is not done then. I mean, now it's like in Instagram, it's a plugin or like a regular thing, but it wasn't really available. So I provided people with photos from my own library and some text, and then people would purchase it for $1.99, and put their own photos. And I think a lot of them use it for like a wedding invitation, really. I was kind of like, I was thinking it's more like an Ed Boucher. You're going to add text and you're going to think about it. And people were like sending an invite, which is fine. It was fun to create. It wasn't easy. It was fun to have that for a while. And then I created an app. From that kind of View magazine background, I created an app for a really lovely photographer by the name of Chris Dorley Brown. He's British, who photographed something that's close to my heart, which is the same scene many years later. So this one is an old defunct hospital in London that then became a condominium. So they're cut because you can swipe the image through. And then became an iBook when the apps didn't work anymore. So what you see here is a photo from 97 and 2012 of the bridge or before the bridge. And you can click and see the two large size. And I love this one with the Boilerman 10 years apart. And Chris and I became friends, and I met him in London, stayed with him, toured London with somebody local. And I do love that feeling when you change from virtually meeting people to actually meeting them, just from creating a website or an app or Instagram. So back to my friendship with Joel Tetamanti. He had a show at MIT in Boston in 2013 and wanted to come and visit us and do a little road trip upstate. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. So he photographed solely with 4x5, which is carrying here. And I carried my Mamiya 6 medium format film, and I had a small digital camera, and I was kind of documenting him and photographing the landscape as we went around Niagara Falls. And I was really struck by how focused, literally focused he was. And he would see things that he really loved in the landscape. You're like, oh, this is great. I said, why don't you stop and photograph? He's like, no, I have a specific subject in mind. We're going to photograph just that, it's film, it's expensive. So that kind of project-oriented approach really kind of brought me back to thinking about photography differently. Not the William Eggleston level where you can like walk around with a camera and capture beautiful things, but really think about the subject more clearly. So these are some of my photos from that trip. I think the day that we got back to our home, I bought the same 4x5 camera on eBay. It's a Toyo 45CF. It's a great little 4x5 camera. And I started using it for my own photography. So artist Gerd Stern, one of my first portraits. And these are friends of ours building a home from scratch. So I kind of played around with the 4x5, reminded myself how to use it, how to spend film. And then basically started coming up with my main serious project of the time. 2014, I go to Israel with my wife, and I did a lot of research ahead of time to create what I call Middle Eastern Promises, in which I re-photograph old historical stereoscope that I bought and found, which are shown here. So the old photo or the stereoscopic card is here, and obviously in a regular card, this would be here. But I changed the right image to be my new photo. That's about 115 years apart, 114 years apart. So to the best of my knowledge and ability, we walked around and found the same scene, and the 4x5 camera allows you to shift the image up and down so you can see more land or less land. So you can kind of change the scene to match that. They showed a lot of land in those photos, and they often had people in the foreground to kind of make sure that the 3D effect works. So these are the same size images as the card itself. That's why you can put it in this viewer. And then I also started experimenting with larger prints. So I made the circle shape to kind of mimic what you try and see through the stereoscope viewer when you look at it. Your eye is trying to combine the photos together. It doesn't really work because the two photos are different enough. In the original stereoscope, those two photos are photographed at the same time, and your eye distance. In mine, it's a very different photo. So I created this so I can actually play with different sizes and make larger prints, but also kind of have that visual effect the way I think it should be. I'm going to show you some more cards. Each one is basically titled from the title on the card, so that really kind of was easy for me to do. Gideon's Battlefield and Hill of Moreh, north from Jezreel, Palestine. Copyright 1900, Underwood and Underwood. And that's my blended photo. I did some 36 by 36 and some 40 by 40. And actually what I'm thinking of doing next is printing them on fabric and printing the old one on one and printing the new one behind it on another fabric, so you can kind of see through with lighting, kind of like a screen in a theater. And that could be really big. This one, there was a person working in a garden in Gethsemane, and I tried to photograph him, and there's a Palestinian gardener who said no. So his tools are there. They're very suspicious of photographers, and I understand them. So the tools are there, and they kind of got combined nicely with the old gardener with this one. This is in Haifa, and you can see how much the Bay of Haifa changed and been modernized. This required quite a lot of research and access to different places. We would email them and call them, and this is a Christian seminary, and they gave us access to go and photograph that. And then, of course, you go there, and there's a fence, there's a tree in the way, but that's what it is. That's the combined one. This is back in Jerusalem, and I think this one worked really well. It's really the same road, but now it's full of tourist buses. And that's the combined one. This one I had to really squeeze the 4x5 to the corner. And I love how people are now just holding the gate and you can see that the paint is not there. I love the feeling that you get to see, instead of somebody modeling an open space, it's now affected by humans. You can't go in now. There's too many tourists. That's the combined one. Here we were Holy Sepulchre Church in Jerusalem. We went in and it was packed with people. There was no room for the tripod. And some tour guide saw me and he said, oh, if you want to photograph this empty, between 8 and 9 a.m., the Christian tourists are having breakfast. That's when you should be here. So that's what we did. So there was just a few people who know the trick. Set up my tripod, took one exposure, one photo, and the priest comes over and you're like, you can have a tripod here. So yeah, I'm done, got the photo. So in Israel, these police barricades are very common. You know, you see them in parades, you see them in protest. For me, it was kind of shocking. It's a really beautiful church, and it's beautiful marble floor. And again, the effect of humans on the landscape or the built environment, that now they have to put these really ugly security guards and security fences there. We walk around for a while and find the location, and I would turn around to photograph it, set up the camera, and I'll be like, oh, I'm just seeing fences and satellite dishes and walls. And my wife said, well, that's the photo. And I'm like, you know, you're right. That is the photo. That's the change over 115 years. Some of these stereoscopes came with a book and a map, and I love maps. So the whole set is called Traveling in the Holy Land through the Stereoscope. And the maps would describe locations of the cameraman and the angle of the camera sometimes to some degree. So I would know that number 16, number 14 is one of my first photos. I'm here, photographed the whole city. So it was, to me, that was an incredible part of that you can actually get to see the map, where they stood at the time, and photograph them there. So while we walk in the Old Town, we noticed this poster, and the old one was designed by Franz Klein, a German graphic designer. So somebody took that poster and added the separation wall on the right side. And it's kind of crude and out of focus. I thought that was kind of perfect for my project, old and new. At some point, I made a book of that, kind of going back to my knowledge of InDesign and graphic design. These are some spreads from the book. Again, I was able to play with the idea of the sizes of the stereoscope in real size, and then my image larger in a circle. And last month, I got published in Osmos magazine, which is a really beautiful conceptual photography magazine, and it's edited by Kay Sophie Rabinovich, who will be one of the guest reviewers at CPW in the festival. Just coming up soon. While I was photographing with the 4x5, I was walking around also with my smaller Mamiya 6. So these are just some shots, sort of more willy-nilly, still part of the project in a way. But again, looking at places that I haven't been in a long time, or I've been as a soldier and I was there as a civilian. This is in Bethlehem. I love that the sign says home. Like what? What home? Who? This is in Hebron. This is where I think images require captions or a story. So this is the front of the market in Hebron that is closed because of settlers that attacked the Palestinian population there. This says, check them when they come out, basically. So they're being checked whenever they go in and out of the house. So instead, this is the back of the house on the left photo. And she's going to hand the baby through, I guess, the kitchen window. They just built this ladder instead of going to the front. So in kind of way to deal with occupation. The separation wall is just showing a little bit on the left side of the photo here. And back in Hebron, this is a military post station. Each unit essentially has certain colors, so when they come in, they will paint that so they know that's their unit. And, you know, the Israeli jogger can just walk around freely. These are not diptychs, they're diptychs for me showing work and kind of explaining it a little bit better than just showing a single photo. Like this one, I just wanted to show the front and the back for you guys to see and understand that. I did think about it that if these were in the show, they will be kind of sized accordingly, you know, like put on the wall next to each other or hiding each other. So it's sort of almost like a concept for that. The Israeli settlers have a sign there about their website and their Facebook page. And this is the shot of the market. And this is back in Jerusalem. I personally really love this photo. I don't think it's always clear why, but I will just say when I looked at it again, I'm thinking that I see a lot of layers of land and people's activity on it. So we get this cinder block walkway and the metal barriers on it, the posts, and then there is just regular kind of rocks, and then another built environment on top of that. So to me, it's very layered and very much an Israeli landscape. After I did the Middle Eastern Promises, I showed it to some people. I thought it would get better traction. It's kind of getting better traction now, 10 years later, interestingly enough. But we sold our home in Barrytown and moved to Catskill. And I photographed the home when it was for sale. The photos were not that great, but some high-end real estate agents saw it and thought it was great. And they started hiring me to do shoots for them.
With you in it?
That's only when it sells. If I'm not in it, it doesn't sell. It's on the market for months. So Edward was asking about that. So I'm shooting with my flash, my strobe, and then I usually will have another photo of me with the strobe on the left or the right, and I can erase that in Photoshop. So I have a layer with natural light, and I have a layer with my strobes, And then if it's a very dark bathroom, you won't see anything. And I don't like to turn on the actual lights because they're usually very yellow in color. So my flash is neutral in color, and I can get like the tile in white and the yellow colors there. And I won't be there in the final photo. Good question, though. I won't be in this photo either. This is a tricky one. It's a very dark bathroom.
Do you have examples of
Yeah, I have one or two. So I realized that I'm really enjoying being out of the studio and photographing and kind of doing stuff that is not computer based. While we still do a lot of computer stuff, it was like 70% of my time was outside now shooting, and then 30% back to assemble the photos or, you know, look at them and fly the drone and really have fun and shoot incredible places. So I really like that world of going out there and shooting. This is an example. I don't think I strobed this one, Edward, but it's an example of without me in it, which I added in the last minute. So I kind of got more in the world of interior design, architecture, not just real estate, shot some beautiful homes, worked for some corporate clients on like bigger jobs, started shooting art installations. This is at Art Oh My of local artist, wonderful artist, Portia Munson. Another show in September Gallery. This is for you, Leslie. About 15 years ago, I started practicing Aikido. That's me here. And that's me here, falling. And after a while of doing Aikido, someone who used to do Aikido and is a photographer said, you know, some of your projects are related to your martial arts studies. I'm like, oh, you know, you're right. So next project I'm showing you is called 180 degrees Tenkan, which we have as a technique in Aikido, where we being approached by somebody who's attacking us, and we turn 180 degrees, throw him over there. So I did that with my camera. These are all digital, handheld, playing around with images that I think were mostly vertical, but shooting vertical allowed me to change the horizon to match them. So I'm kind of using my graphic design knowledge and sensibility to make them interesting. And this is an example of something that kind of got out of nowhere, and I started to doing it as a bigger project, like really spending time going to places, thinking about it, what can be on the other side. It goes back to my love of depicting what happens to nature. There's a train station in Cortland Harmon, and then the other side is this beautiful swamp. I made a little book out of that called 180 Degrees, which is like a flat laying book. And then from that, I made a project called Here, There, where instead of me turning around and photographing a subject, I walked around it. And this is my first photo of this project. And I think I was just kind of shocked by how different the same wall can be from the other side. Now we see the cone on the left corner. We see that discarded pizza plate. The shadow is all different. So I did those for a while as well. This is the same bridge from the other side. The light is different because I walked basically and shot to the other direction. I walked around the movie theater in Koksaki, the drive-in, and photographed the screen from the back. And then the days of Trump arrived. While I was shooting a lot of real estate in the area, I was seeing a lot of Trump signs. So I started documenting those. I would stop. The dog was pretty nasty. And I started documenting these before the election, before 2016. And sort of like an Ed Boucher, like every house on Sunset Boulevard, that's what it's called, every building on Sunset, kind of like a very dry look at nature or look at our environment with the signs, not making it pretty, just documenting what I see. And I made that into, wrote an article on Medium that got kind of big before the election. Somebody kind of got retweeted it and everybody like wrote comments on it. And it was basically 99 Trump signs and 1 Hillary, and the 1 Hillary sign is Hillary for jail. So I wasn't very optimistic. And published that in November. And then as a result of that, I started a mini residency at Basilica in Hudson. I decided it was very fresh that Trump won, so I bought the hat, and I started photographing myself in Hudson. The residency in Basilica was essentially a week of photography and then like a mini show. So here's my love of trains, and ships are coming through in this one. And I got a little mug from Trump that says, "I heart waking up remembering that Donald Trump is president." The best water. So I got that. That's in some of my photos. And this is in Hudson. People saw me and literally will turn around. They did like 180 degrees, like my technique. They didn't care for the hat. So that was like 1 minute project that I did while I was there. And then I did these Trump signs, again, using my knowledge of graphic design and Photoshop. I started depicting what signs would look like through his term. So I would drive around and get some really good signs and then modify them. And I would post them on social media, and some people really freaked out. I just use Google Translate for Spanish because I don't know Spanish, and I figured that's what they will do as well. They don't want to spend money at the Trump campaign, so they'll probably just use Google Translate. And I have other signs about not guilty, in impeachment. Like years ago, I was like, big signs, Trump not guilty, all that stuff. This is the show at Basilica. Mostly just prints that I did, and partly why I did those triptychs is because my printer is a 13x19 and I wanted to get them bigger. So I was like, I'll go back to my studio and print them and tack them on the wall. And I displayed the hat like a sculpture, and I got a Trump aftershave and cologne and a signed photo. And the aftershave smells horrible. It's like, I mean, part of it was like to open it when people showed up and tell me what you think it smells like. And it was just the way they described it. It's pretty bad. COVID, going through photos here. I was actually quite busy as a photographer. During COVID, photographers and real estate agents got permit to drive around and photograph homes in Hudson Valley because people just bought them sight unseen just by the photos, over asking, just get me out of New York City kind of thing. So I bought a 6-foot ruler, and I started photographing people with my 6 feet, walking around Catskill, saying hello to them, asking them if they want to be photographed, it's okay. And, I was holding this big ruler. Most of them said yes. So that's a little zine. No, Catskill.
Oh.
Where do you see Subway? No, all around here. All around here. Very simple zine, 8.5 by 11, folded. And then I did another one called Signs of COVID. This is also like a referencing for Ed Ruscha. Some of his covers of his books are very simple like that. And just playing around with the interior layout of the books. And then moved on to past COVID, to other subjects. So kind of 2 series of works that some people know me by are my long exposure train series, locomotion series, which also kind of grew for me doing real estate and photographing homes, and people are like, this is really beautiful. I'm like, there's a train in the backyard. I'm like, ooh, there's a train in the backyard. That's great. So for me, it was a feature. I started making these diptychs of images with the titles of the exposure, something waiting for a long time for the train, sometimes with Amtrak kind of knowing when it arrives. And then also looking at going back to the same spot again. So that's in the summer, and then I came back to that in the winter. And sort of making like a mini movie vignette. It's a little bit of a story there. This one titled with a 1/200th of a second of a skateboarder, because he passed there and I was really happy while I was waiting for the train that I could get him. And then I put a set of filters on the camera. It's called natural density filters, that basically is like putting sunglasses on a camera and makes you be able to shoot in daytime in long exposure. So you get the sunglasses for the lens, it's a better quality of the sunglasses, and the camera thinks it's much darker, and you can then extend the exposure to that. This is in Catskill. This is near Catskill. And I like that you see some of the farm through the train as well. And then with this series, I would go to other locations. This one is in Israel. I carry my tripod and camera with me. And get that. Different cars have different colors. In Israel, are like blue, red, and silver train. This is a new bridge in Jerusalem that I was really looking forward to shoot. And these are electrified trains, not diesel, so they're silver. I'm like, come on, waiting there for an hour, and that's the color I get. Catskill, back to that. There's a bridge not far from me that I repeatedly shoot in different seasons. I took a class with a wonderful photographer, Simon Norfolk. Some of you guys might know him, and if not, look him up. And he has an amazing series of photos of a tank in Afghanistan that he came back and photographed again and again. So at one time it's tank and poppy seeds, and one time it's nothing, and one time it's winter. So I took an online class with him, really befriended each other, met him in London last year, just have this conversation with him about that, and kind of being inspired by this technique of timing things. So I'm timing the weather, the changing seasons, but also the train. So there are layers of time that I like to play with here. Not always moving subjects or man-built. This is a tree in Olana that I really like to photograph in different seasons. Sometimes in long exposure, like that one. Sometimes regular, but I go there when the light is beautiful or if I'm around. And sort of my last big project for the evening is Shipping Lane, which I started doing a little bit after the trains. I started thinking, what else can I photograph that has movement, that is large? Cars don't work. They're too small. When you start doing long exposure cars, they just disappear. Same with planes. So I did a test with a ship passing, and I was like, ooh, this really is beautiful, and talks about the Hudson River landscape. We see Olana in the background. This was on the cover of Chronogram last month, referencing Hudson River School of Painters through these work. But also talking about the changing environment, like the lighthouse in Hudson is being damaged. The foundation is being damaged because of the size of the ships is getting bigger and bigger. So the foundation is basically being destroyed by that. So they need to repair that. These are all from the Catskill side. And then depending on the light, and if I wasn't busy working, I would go to Hudson. This is near the train station in Hudson. I did the same series from there. In this case, with some people there, and different shapes, and different weather, and even sometimes just the changing color of the shape and the light itself on it. And then I think last year I was there, and I saw that one of the tree was gone. There was a storm a night before. I was kind of horrified, but then I realized when you photograph landscape long enough, you see it changing. You're not there to just one photo. You actually go there for years, and you see what happens. So we go from here to here to here. So they clean up the tree. So we're down to 2 trees for now. And then back in Catskill, so when I find a location that I like, I kind of need to think about it in advance because I want to use it for the next year or so. And I kind of wanted to mimic what I do with Hudson, with the trees, and do it in Catskill, but still frame Olana up on the hill there. And that's a little self-portrait of myself with the ship passing. And then traveling around a little bit. I would like to expand this project, but this is still US based. This is my Rainier in Washington State. These are larger ships. These are ships that are coming with cargo from Japan. So these are it's called Roro. It's roll in, roll out. They just drive them in, immediately they run and get all the cars out as fast as they can in Tacoma. So I like the feeling how this line here literally cuts and interrupts the landscape. I like data, probably for my life as a designer. So I would track these ships and I would know how much distance they traveled in a year and where they went. So part of it, when I show it, I like to put the names there and then either provide the map or talk about it. This is another ship. And then I made a map of 1 year movements of all the ships around the world. So it's kind of like a heat map. And then after I did that, I zoomed in on a section. I think it's near Saudi Arabia. So you really see 2 shipping lanes in action. And all the smaller lines are like smaller, like fishing vessels, for example, versus these 2 major shipping lanes. As Nicole mentioned in the introduction, I started submitting these to different places once I realized I have a series of work that I'm happy with. This was in Compton Gallery last year. For the camera geeks. So my first camera, Pentax K1000. List of cameras that I had to like look them up. Sort of remember the names. I was like, oh, it's kind of amazing. So you go to DP Review and you look down Nikon, for example. It's really hilarious because they have 10 pages of cameras and you start looking back, you're going to one page. And I realized that I just have to go to the last page. And then like, that's where you'll find the Olympus D300L. You know, it's like one of the first cameras. But that's my current setup with the Canon. These are the filters that I mentioned. This is the same idea with a 4x5 with a shift lens. So I can move my image up and down. It's a lens I use for architectural photography, but now for my art as well. What's next? This is a photograph inside Lock 17 of the Erie Canal. I'm doing a year-long Erie Canal residency, and I propose to re-photograph historical photos. So I have access to locations, and I have access to their historical photos in in Syracuse, in the museum. And this is one example of the view. And this is now, and that's then. They removed this beautiful staircase here. So that's gone. With stuff happening in Israel and Gaza, I started cutting maps. So it goes back to my love of maps before. This is a road atlas. And this photo is near the border with Lebanon, which I made 2 years ago. And that says Lebanon up there. So it's essentially the page on a map where you would be if you were to visit this spot. I made 2 of these. Take a long time to cut all these. This is a detail of that map. So I'm just leaving just the road where humans have changed the landscape, and it's sort of like veins in the landscape.
You're cutting from an actual map?
Yeah.
Like gluing that onto your photograph?
I'm actually not gluing the map. I'm not gluing these guys. I'm just gluing the sides because they're too delicate to even glue. They will fall apart. So I'm just putting on top and I'm just putting tape around. But this is the full map. Like this is the full area here of the page. So page 6. I guess we're on 7. 6 is not cut off. And then I'm specifically not cutting foreign countries. So Lebanon at the top is not on the map, right? We don't show roads because we can't go there. So I'm leaving that as an element there. So I only have one to show, and I show the details. And then, CPW does really some amazing things in terms of education and classes. This year, I took a photo salon with Charles Purvis, and we basically were creating work every 2 weeks to bring to a meeting of about 8 or 9 people. And I started working a whole other direction, which I was contemplating if I'll show here, but here it is. It's essentially 2 photographs of Israel that I'm starting to cut through and present different layers and let the viewer actually play with that layering. So you can go and kind of hold the top one and see the bottom. And the 2 photos are very similar, but they're not the same, and they're printed on different paper. So they look different visually. The colors are different. So it's something that I'm playing with now. These photos of some other beautiful work will be shown this Saturday in Rosendale. So that's the card. There's a card behind on the wall here that Nicole put as well. So do come if you can to 415 Main Street, Rosendale on Saturday, and you'll see some work. And the zines that I've shown before, and the books that I've shown before in my presentation, I'll have a table at the zine fair on July 6th and 7th. So come and see that. I'll have one other zine that I didn't show, which is called Electricity, which is another kind of long-term project where I photograph trees that are being harassed by the power lines. And I make this kind of poster of that, and then I cut that into an accordion book. So these are all 4x5 in size when I print them, and then I cut them off, and it's all like an accordion you can put on the wall. So that's that. So we're almost there, guys. Upstate, our weekend is coming up, so I wanted to put a shout out there for 3 of my friends and myself are going to have a show at Cafe Joust in Catskill. And that's our information and website, and there's a lot of stuff to see in Upstate weekend, art weekend, but if you're around, take a look at that. And lastly, I wanted to show this photo that I made or took when I was a soldier in Gaza on a roof of a building guarding this area. It was very senseless, actually, what we guarded, but that was a photo I probably made in 1990. I was in the army 89 to 92 through the first Intifada. And then Radical Society magazine asked me to illustrate the cover for them in 2002. And I wrote Hope, Respect, Dream, and Survive on top of that. And then October 7th happened in Israel. And then the attack from Israel on Gaza is ongoing and kind of crazy, or really crazy. So I wrote this post on Instagram on the 11th after being shocked at what happened, but also not completely being shocked, serving there and seeing how poor these people are in Gaza Strip. And I was there, many years ago when they were poor, so it's only gotten worse there. So I wrote this post. It was, it is a very hard situation for me on both sides, and I call it a lose-lose situation or scenario. And I say that basically the only winner is the military-industrial complex, unfortunately. So 20 years, published this 20 years ago, 22 years ago, and the situation is really pretty bad there. That's it. Questions? Comments? Concerns? Hi.
I loved it. Thanks for sharing, digging through your old
Oops.
I'm curious about the ship. How long of an exposure do you have to do?
This is about 30 seconds. I wanted to pass, almost all of it is passing.
You had to have the exposure starting before the ship came. And after, how do you
So I can start it as soon as I see it passing. I can start it, and then depending on the speed and how far it is from me, the shore and the light, and the color of the ship is what you see. So what you see here is the actual ship, but the front has moved and spent more time on the sensor than the back. So that's why you see more things in the back. And the top part is usually the bridge where the captain or the pilot sits. So it's actually sort of open in between. It's not as a heavy block of color.
And that's Alon.
That's Alana. Yeah. So I have a spot in Catskill that I go back to that I know where I put my tripod on. And it took me a while to figure it out, but once you set up the shot and you like it, you now have to wait for the ship and the weather and for not working on some other project to be there. But I can set it up in minutes now. If I see it, I have a map, so I can see them coming. That's why I know the names. And the map is actually pretty accurate. So at the beginning, it was saying, estimated to be in your location at 1:42. I'm like, oh, come on. It's like, I would be there like at 1:25 or whatever, 1:20. But it's actually pretty accurate. I learned that it's pretty accurate. So I can kind of track them on my screen. I see the map and I see when they're coming, going. They're going to Albany and to one other port near Albany. And they have to basically go back down. So if they come back from Canada with oil or gravel, they do their route. Sometimes it's the same ship. A year later, it will be the same one that went through the map through like Europe and back to the Hudson Valley. Yeah, Pete.
I know that you and I think a lot. Both of us think far too much, probably about time overworking. And I found that my contemplations on the subject of my life outside of photography, as well as photography. I'm wondering if you had sort of feelings of transformation like that just through the contemplation of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there's been any sort of crossover into normal life.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the crossover for me was from regular life. A point that I forgot to mention before is part of doing Aikido, not just the technique of me rotating 180 when somebody comes to attack me, is that you repeat something, and after you're being punched by somebody thousands of times, because you've done it for 15 years, that slows down. So it's probably like professional dancers. They already know the move, and for them, whatever they do, the spiraling it's not a big deal. Or gymnasts, if you've done it so many times, so that for me has created this effect of being less nervous about certain movement. And I think that influenced this project, where I subconsciously started looking into photographing and slowing things down because my speed is different. Yeah. I don't know if Tanya, you practice martial arts. Do you feel different with martial arts affecting your work?
It's actually a hard question. I've been thinking about it as you were reflecting in this really specific way about the 180
Yeah.
and the other one.
Yeah, the two directions. Yeah, here or there. Yeah.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
Just to think about that perspectival shift, and also as a form of self-defense to turn away. So I practice a different martial art, but I think it has definitely affected my life and my work, but mostly in terms of a kind of elevated, extreme sense of focus.
Yep.
That I can't meditate. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So.
But writing and training, right? Like if your mind wanders and you start worrying about the future, or about the conversation you had, or about whatever it is, you get punched in the face or something or whatever. So you really have to be in the present in a way that I'm actually not that good.
Besides being, when you don't do it, but when you're on the mat, you're probably fully focused on that.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Yeah. So I think that it's helped me extend my focus when I'm out working or when I'm creating a large piece, and just whatever it comes to me.
Yeah. I feel, like I went to photo review, Santa Fe photo review, and showed this work, and also when it was in the gallery in Brooklyn, and people came to me and felt that they said it's very meditative. they feel calm when they see it, and it kind of goes back to when Kim Suja hired us to do the website. Is she felt like our website is more calm and quiet. So I think I'm always looking for that somewhere in the photos. And our teacher in Woodstock, our Aikido teacher, has been doing it for over 60 years. An amazing person, Harvey Sensei, has a T-shirt out that says Aikido is meditation in action. And I don't meditate, but I do Aikido. So it is that kind of state of mind. So meditation in action is essentially this kind of slow motion shit. Yeah. Shortcut. Yeah. Meditation under attack in action, right? Was it? Yeah. Meditation. You know the short. It's meditation. I don't know if there's attack there, but yeah. Meditation. What is it? Meditation in action under attack. So meditation in action while photographing is the other side of that.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah. Hey, Ruth.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting.
Thank you.
All your kind of why you did what you did, players, your interest. But one of the things I think that like everybody is pointing out that for me what kind of ran through the work was what everyone is pointing out. The two sides of whether it was what it was like, 100 years ago, what it is now, or whether you turn this way, or whether you turn that way, or whether it's from this view of the tree or from the Capitol view or from the Hudson.
Yep.
And or like from Israel to Palestine, which way do you see where's the border? How come Lebanon's not in
Right.
that?
Right.
Just so thinking about meditation, that's what they say. It's kind of you see something from all sides. Sometimes it's described as not taking sides. You kind of have this overview.
Yep.
And your mind is that clear. That you kind of see
Yep.
it from all points of view. And then I guess things that would affect time and slow things down. So
Yep.
I felt like there was a kind of just a really strong underlying philosophical, like what he said about time. And the way over time your viewpoint might shift or change or it was so interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, we are in time. We can't suspend it, or we have the illusion of suspending it, which I'm doing. I'm changing time in a way by slowing it down to see something that we can't see with the naked eye. And Pete is doing that with his fireflies, for example, layering it, something that we don't see. We see 10 of those, not hundreds. So we're changing something. I'm more interested, I would say, in photography where I'm showing another point in it that is right there, but we either don't stop to look at it or we don't have the regular vision to see it. Yeah, and that's sort of meditative. Yeah, do it.
Sorry, but I don't agree, because I think it depends on the speed of the passing. So, for instance, if you travel with a super high-speed train in China that goes 700 kilometers per hour, which is 500 miles per hour.
Yep.
Farther away, you can see the landscape, or it's close, you can't see. It's blurry.
Sure.
And so it's basically, go there.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that the perception of the eye has limits in terms of the speed of the passing
Sure.
object.
Yeah. 24 frames is our limit. Is based 24 frames a second. Sort of our limit in a way. That's when it becomes motion.
I'm no expert.
Limit where your eye starts seeing. That's why film, not video, is 24, because it becomes a natural feel of movement. Yeah, 60 or 120. But that becomes slower again because you have more frames in the same second. So you shoot 24 when you shoot, yeah. It's the more natural our eyes set up to kind of see this film as movement.
There's a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
But just reading about what you were saying about time, and just it does feel. It was really amazing just to have you go so far back in your work
Mhm.
and to see how much, like the way that over time, the way that you kind of wrestle with what the photographic medium kind of can and can't do.
Yep.
In really interesting ways. Like what it can't do is as interesting as what it can do.
Right.
What it can describe, what it can't describe. And then also what you were saying, I really like the kind of and both, the kind of like these things exist all at once, and you're not necessarily like in that sort of judgment seat that photography can be, like so much about like taking a position.
Right.
But I was curious about, for me, the where you put on the hat. Like I was amazed to me that I had such a like strong reaction to that. Like it seemed like such a hard thing to do. And you were like, I really just thought the hat. Yeah, it's so gorgeous. And I just felt like it was kind of like, I don't know, racing.
My hat.
Sort of
Go back to my hat.
about that. It's part of the openness that you have to like, I don't know, but I just was kind of just curious to hear you talk more about that. That would be.
Well, I think, when I did this series of photos, I thought Hillary will win, but the Hudson Valley was basically saying she will not. The signs were not there. And I did the same series with Biden, and I would say unscientifically, I saw 55% signs for Biden versus, so kind of felt like he's going to win, And, okay, now, and I don't see signs. Everybody's really tired. I see some Trump signs, and if that is still there, but there's like a boat in front of it, and it's falling apart. There is some signs about sleeping with Biden and all kind of stuff like that. But less than Tuesday. I think everybody wants it over. That's kind of what it feels like. I want to do this again. I want to do 3 series of books about the politics of the Hudson Valley and show the change. And it's kind of funny, and it's a little bit like this is that's really good. Like I was looking for the handmade signs. It's also social economics. A lot of the houses for Trump, you could see they're there for Trump versus other ones who don't necessarily put signs for Hillary. So I kind of, I was shocked that he won, but I wanted to do something with it because of the Basilica show. So I found some location. I really wanted it to be a poetic shoot. Again, going back to me shooting real estate, I now had the equipment to shoot like I do with the strobe. I don't have to be next to the camera. Something called Cam Ranger allows me to look at the iPad or my phone and see what the shot is. And I'm kind of hiding probably my phone on self-timer in the back, but I can set up the shot and then go in and run through and be there and then look at it again on my phone. And then the train passes and it's great. It's a bit of an act, and I enjoy that. I'm not an actor, but people came to see the show at Basilica, and they would walk around and look at the photos pretty seriously. And they will look at the signs, and they will look at the photos on the wall, and they will come to me at the end and like, this is very interesting. Who's this guy with the Trump hat? So there is a change of persona. I can put that hat and, people don't know it's me. And it's also, yeah. yeah. But the hat changes, So I'm kind of referencing that. I spoke with a few people when I was photographing the signs. People would come out of nowhere, like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, I like your Trump sign." Now I'm driving a Prius, so it's kind of obvious I'm not really but Trump guy. But they were interested in the fact that I'm just there to document it and kind of like happy to be with them through that process of protest. Nobody was mean or anything like that, except for the dog.
Oh no, I had somebody come after me. I was photographing a tree, and this person came after this woman, and she followed me in her car. She wanted to be far away from the tree that was, and she had a Trump for a women for Trump bumper sticker. And she followed me. She in my car. mean, for like 10 minutes to make sure that I was far away.
Same way goes.
You know, I was looking at
Sam O'Leary's way.
you know. But it's a little bit frightening.
Yeah.
I think that it has to be a kind of safety.
Yeah, I mean, I was a different persona. I mean, I think actors do that. You know, you put in like the wife beater shirt and you put the hat, and I found this gasoline can there, and I was like, it is a different Alon, right? It's a different person who maybe is voting for Trump. So this is referencing an artist I really love. His name is Rodney Graham, Canadian artist, passed away 2 years ago. Who did a series of works like that, also in like panels and lit up panels, and him as a Photoshop person. So in a photo freak shop, when people get the film developed, he's sitting in front of the counter, he smokes the cigarettes in the lounge. He has all these personas. So he was kind of a direct result of me seeing that work, and he's having fun with characters. And you know, that's sort of my way to deal with the trauma. The same with these. You know, having time in the studio to work on stuff, and it was Trump, Trump, Trump all over the news, you know. Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, well, one of the things really impressed me is your throughout the work, is your ability to hold these pairs of opposites.
Yeah.
You know, we can gravitate towards one or the other, we feel very uncomfortable. And I can see you know, occupying these opposite spaces as witness.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think that's really quite an important skill.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, I am an immigrant in America. You know, I'm a white, middle-aged immigrant, so I can pass as anybody, but I have an accent, and I see things differently, and I served in the army, and I had like experiences that definitely shaped me, and I didn't say that in the beginning, but army service is 3 years. The first year, you don't know what's going on. It's just complete shock because it's so different. Even people tell you, oh, you know, like you can't be ready, just go through that. The second year is kind of like where you actually get into like some kind of a career. I was like a sergeant first class, and I was in artillery unit, and then I taught artillery in a school, and then I was actually in the video department in the base with the fake tree sign. So that was the second year. And the third year, you just want to be out of it, but then you're starting to cut the days on like on the wall next to the bedroom, because you're basically are like, you get it, you've learned what you can learn, and now you're in like prison for another year. But it shaped me. It shaped how I look at things. It shaped how serious I am on some stuff. It shapes a certain sense of humor, because if you don't have the sense of humor, you're kind of stuck there. Every day is very long, so you have to have a sense of humor. So I think it is a motif in my work. I'm not escaping Israel. I love the country. I'm so sad of what's going on in Israel and Gaza now. But it's, you know, it's a home. And when I go there, I do photograph differently. But it does shape, I think, my two alternative views. I'm an American now. I have a passport, and that's a relief. But I'm really from another place that is so different. So I think those are the two views too.
I have a very simple question.
Yeah.
It's kind of off topic.
Yeah.
I really like that you created
Mhm.
reference that Boucher and the text
Yeah.
that goes
The
on.
image words, yeah.
So with some of your recent work,
Mm-hmm.
have you had to fight that resistance to maybe want to put some text over it? I mean, did it ever cross your mind?
Yeah, I do some stuff with text.
Still.
Yeah, a little bit. Yep, I do.
With the recent stuff.
It's kind of coming and going. I'm just trying to find it. Yeah, yeah.
That was great. What
Yeah.
year was this?
2000, 2000 and I think 2011, 2012. So, you know, if the app world, if you have a lot of marketing, is you can really go through. In the beginning, there may be less apps then, but now it's a zoo of apps. But there weren't really any apps that allowed me. It came only from my need to be like, I want to write on the photo with different fonts and change the color. It's simple. Like, why can nobody do it? So I did it, and it's simple enough to program. Yeah, I had a Rushay mic. Yeah. So I did that. Yeah. I'm thinking wedding invitations, but could be memes. Yeah. But, you know, now there's a lot of apps that do that. So then it could have been somebody buying the idea or the app for me, but if you're small and you're just selling for $1.99, at some point I made it free. What made me chuckle was that I had a server with like 10 of my photos that were programmed to show up in the app in that window here. These are photos I kind of gave people as a sample, and then you can add yours. And I'm like, most people will add yours, and these are mine. So this would be empty row, and that would be just add an image, and these were available. So I could change them from the server, and they will disappear next time you boot up the app. It'll be different. So that kind of made me chuckle about the fact that my photographs are actually out there with people that don't really know me, and
But I mean, like, you have to admit, like, your recent work would look great with some of the.
Yes.
For me,
Yeah.
when I watch Instagram, and besides the memes, like, some of my favorite posts are like kind of like.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Because they are kind of like Zen meditations, right?
Yep.
And when they're done.
Yep. I think it's hard to do well. I mean, Edward of course, did it really well. So that's part of that. Yeah. Thank you. Edward.
I'm totally confused. When did Photoshop introduce text?
This is not Photoshop, though. This is in your iPad. So Photoshop was on the iPad for years.
But basically, am I wrong that Photoshop is not kind of that?
Yeah.
Text?
Yeah. You could do it. You can't. It was not the social part of that.
For people without Photoshop.
So you have an iPad. You don't have another computer. You don't have Photoshop because that's for the pros. And you just want to play around with text and photos, and all you have is an iPad, because that's really like became the device that people started using, like a magazine and kind of content creation, light content creation. So you could do that. Photoshop is really, not for everybody. So it was really for people to do stuff on a very simple way. Simplicity is key for a lot of these apps. Exactly. Hopelessly romantic, Andy. Sure.
Comment is, I was agreeing with what a lot of people were saying, but I would recast it rather than your having shot opposites. What I particularly like is that they weren't opposite. They weren't choosing sides. They were just showing two different views, and you could take whatever you took from it, but they weren't just supposed to be opposite. They were more open, like you are, right?
Yeah.
And that's your perspective.
Mm.
And I just think that's really important at this moment, particularly with the Trump series.
Mhm.
You have to like
Yep.
be more open-minded and not
Yep.
just banish
Yeah.
those that are the other. And
Yeah.
you do that in your work, so
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Now, my very esoteric question, it's weird, but
Hmm.
early on, when you were showing different pictures side by side, I thought you said something about, suggested something about that, the way eyes look at things and then bring them into focus, like even if you're looking at two and if you're looking at one.
Mm-hmm.
I know because my eyes don't do it anymore, so
Uh-huh.
I don't really remember.
Right.
But were you suggesting that the way you place some of the pictures together, that eyes would start automatically doing something and blending them?
Yeah. I mean, these photos. Ooh, I'm going here. I think. Yeah. These photos, the original stereoscope, is set up. It's photographed with a camera with two lenses at the same time that are your eye distance. So when they got the photos from the lab, they had this photo and this one, but it was literally when you close your eyes. Thanks, Pete. When you close your eyes, that's the difference, right? You're jumping a little bit. So those are the two photos. So I created a new one 114 years later. It's not going to be the same landscape. And when you look through it, it was very messy. And people asked me about it. I said, well, that's the political situation in Israel. It's kind of messy. It was a metaphor of what's going on there for ever and ever. It's I wish it would change. But that's my point of trying to make this something that is more cohesive that I can show people, because there is a challenge in this. I would go and meet people and I would bring a bunch of cars and I would bring this, and you got to put it in, and the light has got to be right. You got to have light on the car, not on your eyes to see it. So I realize it's a very tricky endeavor, and yes, it's a messy issue with the photos and the politics, but I want people to see the photos. I worked hard to make them. So that became this vision, which is blended in Photoshop of the two photos together in layers. And it's becoming a little bit solarized, which is a sort of process in black and white photography, not related to Photoshop at all, but it becomes this effect where things are coming through with slightly different color. So people that do solarization in black and white darkroom will kind of know the effect there as well.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, that's very beautiful.
Thank you.
And it was really lovely way to end.
Thank you. Yeah, I struggle with what to say because I'm from there, but I think it's important. We don't live in a vacuum, and you know, we need to deal with it. Well, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, thank you very much.